What's going on, guys? Today, I wanted to go in depth and talk about how I managed to lose over 100 pounds in just under 4 months, which to some people seems completely impossible, and it's going to be somewhat like a story time, so you're definitely going to want to grab a snack, sit down, and just enjoy this video. Real quick though, before this video can go on, if you wouldn't mind, it really means a lot if you'd go and drop a like on this video, and make sure you're subscribed to the channel if you haven't already. It really helps out, and I truly appreciate it. But without further ado, let's get started on this video.
She just wants to flirt, so I flirt right back. I just put in work, yeah, I work like that. Got me falling and it hurts, yeah, it hurts so bad. All in and it's worth everything I have.
One thing I do want to point out right away is just because this happened to work for me, it does not mean that it would work for anyone. So I do not recommend trying something as extreme as what I went through to actually go and lose this weight, as well as there's definitely things I would have changed throughout my diet, my exercise, and how I went about losing this weight, because I will say, while yes, I did lose a lot of fat, there was definitely water weight loss, there was definitely some muscle lost, especially with how quickly I lost that weight. So again, just quick disclaimer, I would not recommend anyone trying any of this stuff without seeking a medical professional first and making sure it's right for you. So to get to where I was losing weight in the first place, you need to understand how I gained the weight to begin with. I've always had problems with my weight going either low or going up really high. And this story, I'm gonna start out where I was not overweight. I was doing very well on my weight, and I was weighing about 175, which was pretty low for what I'm used to staying around, because usually my weight would be closer to the 180 to 220 range. In general, I was usually a pretty active person, and even at my heavier weights, I didn't look like I was like obese and fat. I more so looked like I had a very good build to me, very broad shoulders, and I looked very muscular, almost like I was a bulking bodybuilder or a linebacker. Where this story really begins is the end of 2019. I find myself living in my car in the middle of the winter. Fast forward a few months, the whole virus and pandemic kick in, and there's all the problems going on in the world at that time, and just like that, I got laid off. And from dealing with a lot of problems in my relationship, that whole 2020 year flew by. I wasn't focused on my diet. I wasn't focused on, exercising or anything like that. And fast forward, it is now 2021 February, and I find myself looking in the mirror and realizing I really let myself go. I was weighing a little over 262, and I just felt awful about myself, and I've always dealt with depression and body dysmorphia, so I already, even at my thinner weights, wasn't feeling good about myself. So now it just randomly one day, it literally just hit me like, wow, I have really let myself go. At that moment, I knew exactly what I needed to do. I went on Facebook Marketplace, Craigslist, and a bunch of different places, and I started looking for different gym equipment. I ended up finding a bench and a bunch of different weights. I actually made a video where I turned my room into a gym slightly later on past that point. You guys should definitely check that video out if you haven't seen it already. But at that point, I take it upon myself, go and actually start working out and trying to get my weight back down. Over the next few weeks of me exercising pretty regularly, or at least as much as I possibly could, which wasn't actually that much, and with water fasting almost every other day for a handful of weeks, like I said, which if you don't know what water fasting is, it's basically going a certain amount of time, in this case 24 hours, without eating a single thing and only drinking water. And I was doing this every other day for quite some time, and within the first couple weeks, I ended up losing a little over 10 pounds. However, that didn't last too long because my relationship problems caught up to me, along with the bad diet that my ex at the time was bringing with it. And if anything, from the water fasting and the depression and diet and binge eating that I brought upon myself from that point, I actually ended up gaining even more weight. And by the time it actually came to it, it was the end of May, and me and my girlfriend at the time ended up splitting up, and I found myself weighing my all-time heaviest of over 270 pounds. I think the highest I actually ever saw myself on the scale was about 277.2. And I hated how I looked. That's why also at this time there isn't a whole lot of pictures. I'll probably have on the screen one of the few pictures I have of me at that specific weight, and I just didn't want to look at the scale. I did not want to see myself. I was completely disgusted that I looked that way, fresh out of a 2.5-year relationship, and I just felt awful. While I was feeling down and bad, I knew I had to go and get my life started. I couldn't be moping around feeling like trash, and this was one of the first times I finally could have time for myself. I didn't have to worry about someone else always taking up all my time, making me feel bad for absolutely no reason, and this was the perfect opportunity that allowed me to have this time to go back and work on actually putting in that work and losing this weight. The month of June started, and I started off with a 5-day water fast, so 5 straight days of not eating a single thing, just drinking water. This is pretty intense, but I always like to do a pretty sizable water fast before any big transformation, because that way I get used to controlling my appetite. After those 5 days, it was off to the races. I started experimenting with different anabolic foods. I'll probably have them on the screen, and it was very enjoyable. They were foods that I really liked. They were high in protein, decently sized in carbs, nothing over the top. I always tried to make sure that I was having more protein than I was carbs, and as little sugar and as little fats as I possibly could. All of them very low calories, tons and tons of variety, and that's what I really liked. It wasn't like I was eating the same thing every single day, except a lot of these recipes I wouldn't have even minded, and this was what made this extremely enjoyable. The diet was pretty basic, like I mentioned. Make sure to get in at least 0.5 to 1 gram of protein per body pound of myself, and along with that I wanted to stay in a caloric deficit so I could actually be burning more calories than I was bringing in. That way I could actually go and lose the weight. Ideally, most people would go like in a smaller deficit of only a few hundred calories. That way they aren't losing as much muscle or anything like that. I went pretty extreme and went for as low as 1,000 calories a day. So I definitely wouldn't recommend this, like I mentioned, but I was in such a deficit, and on top of that, my exercise was, at that point, I was waking up, drinking some water, relaxing a little bit, and then I would go for a 30-minute walk, and then a bit later in the day, after I ate my meal and everything, I would go and have workout, which usually was about 30 to 40 minutes. For that first month, diet and exercise stayed extremely consistent with very few changes, if anything. What was very important was my consistency. I was sticking to the diet, I was weighing out all my meals, everything that I put into my body, I was weighing out everything. I had a food scale and I would do that, and I would not stray away from it. If it was something that wasn't on part of my diet, one of the foods that I had or one of the vegetables I had, I was not having it. It was only the things that I had planned for myself. By the end of the first month, I had lost somewhere between 35 and 45 pounds, which sounds extremely crazy, but like I said, I went from basically not exercising at all at that point and eating complete garbage and trash, always in a caloric surplus, so I was always gaining more and more weight, to now being in such a heavy deficit, along with exercising not just once a day, but twice a day with weights and cardio. It ended up turning into this perfect mess of weight loss for me. What I wanted to also point out about my exercise is, yes, I was going on walks, but the walks weren't just normal walks. Most of them would be uphill and on unsteady ground such as gravel or something, but definitely the incline helped me to always keep some sort of pressure on me. And by this point, by the end of the month, I started seeing these results, and I thought, I gotta push myself even harder. July came around, and the way I figured I can make this even more difficult is to go and buy a weight vest for my morning walks or jogs. And so just like that, that's exactly what I ended up going and doing. And now my day consisted of waking up. I wouldn't drink any water. I would go on my 35 to 45 minute walk, which usually was almost always 45 minutes. I would come in, relax for a little bit, drink a little water, and then within an hour, go out and have another 35 to 45 minute walk or jog again. And then I would relax for a little while, and then I would have my one meal. And then towards the end of the day, I would either have 30 to 45 minute workout with weights or another walk on top of that. And then once that was done, I would end my day with some sort of fruit snack, such as like an apple, a banana, something like that. It was just overall tons and tons of liquids, tons and tons of exercise. I should also mention that for this whole time, even the month before, so the June, I was drinking a lot of water, not just when I was fasting, but I would drink anywhere from 1.5 to 2.5 gallons of water a day. It was extremely excessive, but it helped me to keep water weight off, and it also allowed me to flush out a lot of salts in my body, so if I did have some sort of salt on my food, it wasn't really affecting that. By the end of July, or technically the beginning of August, I had my first cheat meal in almost 2 months, but I definitely didn't overdo it, and I definitely made sure I was cutting back, the days prior, and by the time it was done, even with the cheat meal, within a day or two, I had already lost any of the weight that I would have gained from that. July wrapped up, and I ended up losing about another 30 pounds that month. And so then August came around. The only difference was now between my morning walks, I wasn't having water, so I was going completely fasted for 2 separate workouts, and I definitely don't recommend that. I went extremely hard on my diet, cut back calories even more. At this point, I think I was eating somewhere between 500 and 800 calories a day. Most of my meals were basically the same thing. I would eat one giant omelet and maybe a piece of toast or something on the side, maybe a rice cake. It was just getting more and more intense, but for me, it was sustainable to an extent. I wasn't really craving. I wasn't feeling hungry throughout the day. I overall felt very good, and every day I was eating an omelet with spinach, and it never got old for me. And I think part of that reason was low-calorie sauces, which I've talked about in the past. Low-calorie sauces are 100% just like the best thing. It can turn me eating the same thing for a month straight to turn it into something slightly different every time. So basically August flew by as well, and by this point I'm well past where I wanted to lose weight. I think by the end of August, I want to say I was about 190 pounds. The end of August comes around, and that's my birthday, so obviously I had to celebrate a little bit, but again, I made sure to cut back beforehand so I wasn't having a ton of calories on top of my normal calories. End of August, early September, I found out that I would be moving soon. From that point, I ended up packing up my stuff and focusing slightly less on the diet, more so trying to just maintain my weight. That being said, I was also upping my exercise, so now I was doing my 2 to 3 walks with some form of weights on top of that. I was always trying to add more and more, and I was really overworking myself, but at the same time, it worked. Like I mentioned at the beginning, probably not the safest way, probably not the healthiest, but overall it did end up working. On top of that, one of the things I really liked was I was getting more on a schedule throughout this whole thing. I was starting to go to bed earlier, I was starting to wake up earlier, I was overall feeling more energized, feeling really good. So overall, I've been maintaining very well in this time too. That is the main ways I actually went and was able to lose all this weight, was just a ton of excessive exercise, a very, very strict and very, very deficit diet, and just consistency. Consistency was the overall biggest thing, and just keeping to it, not straying from the diet, the workouts, or anything like that. I know this video ended up being a lot longer than I probably expected it to at the beginning, and there was a handful of points I didn't really necessarily get to explain more in depth as I would like, so I'll definitely probably have more videos discussing those things in the future. So it would really mean a lot if you would take just a second and drop a like on this video and subscribe to the channel and hit all the bells and notification things so you never miss out on a new video. If you guys do have questions that I didn't get to, definitely comment those in the comment section. I try to read and respond to as many comments, basically all the comments that get left on my channel, whether that's on this video or a video from 5 or 6 years ago. So definitely go and leave a comment. Share this video with your friends and family. It really means a lot. And I'm going to end it here, so I will see you in the next video.